The first paper is Indigenous Families and the Impact of Colonization. This is the project working title, and the speaker is Jenifer.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Just while they're getting the PowerPoint organised, I'll just give you a brief introduction. Firstly, I'm an Indigenous Australian descended from the Yorta Yorta and Barappa Rappa tribes of the southeast of the continent, now known as Australia. My people are the river people of Dungala, the large river which now separates the state of New South Wales from the state of Victoria. This river is now called the Murray River, and it traditionally has been the lifeblood of my people, and during colonisation of our people, we were rounded up and detained along the river on missions. Here we go, we're all sorted. Now, I'm a visual arts lecturer at the Institute of Korea Education, and my research for my PhD is based on my family and their journey throughout colonisation and until today. I've therefore been researching, doing field trips and making art, and intend to complete my PhD with a body of artwork and an exegesis. What you'll be seeing here are just some of my journals. This PowerPoint is on loop and it will just keep going. You'll see some of my paintings, some of my old photographs, and you know, there's quite a lot. Just leave it and it'll go. My paternal grandmother was born at Kumrangunja Mission Station, which was established after its former mission Maloga was closed further down the Murray River. My great-great-great-grandmother was the first woman to come to the mission at Maloga in 1874, where she met her first white person. It's not that long ago, really, is it? My great-grandparents left the mission around 1913, when my grandmother was around 9 years old. Old Gunda, my great-great-grandfather, was known as a gun shearer. Now in Australia, where I come from, a gun shearer is a very accomplished shearer who can shear more sheep than any other person per day. So they earned very good money. He didn't want to stay on the mission. He wanted to go out and work and earn a good dollar. Well, in those days, pounds. He worked from station to station following the seasonal work, and of course the family followed. The family, of course, worked on the stations as well. Sadly, my great-grandmother passed away in 1919 while working on a station in outback New South Wales. This was the prime opportunity for the Aboriginal Welfare Board to take both my grandmother and my great-aunt, send them to be trained at the notorious Cootamundra Girls Training Home for domestics, and the family never saw either of them again. History has a habit of repeating itself, and at a young age my father too was taken from his mother to become a ward of the state. He too was sent from property to property as a young lad to work on farms around country Victoria during the 1930s. I'm completing my PhD by Creative Arts and Exegesis at Deakin University, and my work is an attempt to show how arts practice and storytelling are important modes of making and preserving knowledge that would otherwise be lost. This research will use personal experience, oral history and visual practice to examine the effects of colonisation on Indigenous families and how oral history and art permits a partial recuperation and overcoming of loss. The research will extend understandings of the nature and makeup of contemporary Indigenous families and the ways in which oral history and art become a crucial means of overcoming loss and reclaiming identity. Freyberg, Adelson and Shapiro suggest that trauma experienced in one generation has profound effects on the emotional lives of not only the children of that generation, but the next generation, even the descendants 6 or 10 generations hence. They refer to the families that are possessed by their ghosts. They mention that they propose that in every nursery there are ghosts stating they are the visitors from the unremembered past of parents, the uninvited guests at the christenings. For the stolen children, parent love was severed. This left children and their parents without protection from the malevolent ghosts that have taken up residence in Aboriginal homes. A right to a loving home and the security of cultural values and practice firmly grounds us all. When colonisation interrupted and dismantled this framework, the very structure of society was undermined and rendered tenuous. Added to this, the removal of children from Indigenous families severed them from the connections and care necessary to shore up emotional security. With an alienated family model by which to form notions of upbringing for their own children, later generations grappled with the social disability and voids that shaped family experience. This includes a sense of displacement, loss and identity, and a struggle with a true sense of belonging. Institutions set out to make our people feel ashamed of their identity and culture to the point where they became fearful of anyone knowing of their Aboriginality. They kept this to themselves wherever possible. They were to, quote, think white, look white and act white. And certainly, with a bit of luck, to marry white. Older generations did not pass on their language, traditions or other information about their families because they were told to be ashamed of who they were. The children who were taken away were told not to return to their camps. Institutional life was to serve one purpose, and that was to sever all connections with traditional Indigenous culture. Now these children must aspire to adopting the superior white culture and identity in order to assimilate into white society. Okay, the backgrounds, aims and objectives of my research. Now I better just get the nod from people. I don't want to take too much time, so keep going. This research will draw on personal experience as a case study in order to illuminate the effects of colonisation on the structure and experiences of Indigenous families and to find ways of articulating this through visual arts. The research investigates the ways in which people have responded to the negative attitudes in their lives from generation to generation. Through the research, I will gather oral histories from community and explore government documents and archives, as well as family documents, including photographs, in order to find information on both my grandmother and father. Both were institutionalised and both grappled with the voids left in their lives. My father became a ward of the state at an early age. My grandmother was taken at around the age of 11. They were institutionalised and didn't return to their families, so the ties were severed, which was part of the plan, I'm sure. My father spent time at Rupertswood Salesian Brothers Boys' Home and later Tally-Ho Boys' Home. After this, he was, under government law, able to be apprenticed to farmers as a worker, and he was sent to various places around the state. He escaped many of these places only to be picked up by the police and returned to the depot, and then back to the home and then back out to another job. It was pretty tough for a young lad who, amazingly enough, would find his way back to his mother no matter where she had moved to. Using archival material as a springboard for gathering further information through oral histories and interviews, and also for capturing experience through visual imagery, this research aims to better articulate both the gaps and the voids in Indigenous families as well as the ways in which cultural practices including storytelling and the making of art assists in restoring connections to place, family and cultural identity. Oral history is a meaningful and valued way in which our culture has been transmitted for many generations and will continue our traditions into the future. My research will lead me to these gaps and voids in my family's past, and part of my research will be to go around collecting oral histories from elders in our family and in our community. Just skipping a bit here because I don't want to take too long. My journey will take me to country where the shadows of the footsteps of my grandmother and father remain. How have these policies of child removal impacted on Aboriginal families? This study will provide a window into their worlds through a practice, research, exegesis and body of artwork in order to translate into images the significance this has for Aboriginal people today. Subsidiary research questions, or how does oral history help us to understand the structure and experiences of Indigenous families further? How does art making as traditional practice and visual imagery help to illuminate experience? And in what ways can oral histories and artwork assist Aboriginal people to overcome their losses? I will be revisiting country and collecting and analysing the oral histories of my family and community. These accounts will be interwoven in the exegesis and will also provide a foundation and inspiration for completing a body of artworks for exhibition. I will be working on a theory that for many of us, when telling our stories of the past, we inspire others to form individual mental images to fit the narrative. It is from these images that each and every one of us reinterpret our individual mental images as visual narratives, and from this we tell our own stories. Is this where my practice draws its images and creates knowledge of our past? In the practice of making these images, it is the tacit knowledge that enables the artist to interpret that which has been inherited, that close association with identity, culture and knowing. Travelling to these places from my family's past will, in addition, prompt my intuitive and creative skills in order that my images are filling in the voids of our past. Just going back to oral histories, the reasons why I'd be collecting the oral histories, of course, is to fill in the gaps. Some of our elders are fabulous storytellers, and it's wonderful to sit there and speak to them and interview them and find out all these wonderful things, as many are reaching their 90s now. Oral histories have the capacity to reinstate voices, giving the work a sense of place and time and an authenticity which speaks to the reader. A selection of oral histories resourced, such as Peeler, gives examples of how other authors have approached the recording of oral histories. Peeler gives an insight into the lives of our people after being disenfranchised and disillusioned by their treatment at nearby missions, and their struggles when they left. They walked off the mission in protest and set up camp in another area. Aboriginal knowledge systems will inform the theoretical foundations from which this research will be conducted. In particular, I will draw from Wilson, Martin and Arbin, who have highlighted that relationships or relatedness between all, living and non-living, as a common feature within Aboriginal knowledge. This connectedness will inform my methodology to bring diverse aspects of my study together as a whole. It is important that my work bring to the fore the importance of storytelling and the visual images, which express and communicate our culture and identity. The aim of this project is to illuminate, document and analyse through text and art how Aboriginal people's lives have been shaped by colonial practice. My key questions will be how the lives of my grandmother and father were affected and how their experiences can shed light on the experiences of the broader community.
Aboriginal knowledge systems will inform the basis on which my research is planned, and it will be conducted in a culturally appropriate manner. I'm aware it would be inappropriate to press participants should sensitive issues arise. This research will add to the knowledge and understanding of issues which have impacted on Aboriginal people and my family in particular. I'll propose to all participants that the text and images are seen by family and community elders prior to public scrutiny, as in Aboriginal protocols and guidelines. Look, just summing up so I don't take too long and pass on to somebody else. I won't go any further, but I think, you know, the images speak for themselves. You can see what I've been up to. I've probably got about 6 months, 8 months to go to write my exegesis. It's still going, and let's see where it leads. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.